Okay, we're ready to go. Fire away, Linda. Welcome.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that, Guy. That was a great introduction. I wrote it, but it was great. And hello to everyone. As a District 33 Director, Distinguished Toastmaster Guy Dawson has said, I am the Secretary for the Lompoc Valley of Flowers Toastmasters. I've been doing this job for 2 years, and before I became the Secretary, we did not have much consistency with the minutes or the files that were kept for our club. So when I started out, it was basically I had to figure out how I wanted to do this. And it was, my main emphasis was on the minutes. And as Guy said, that's what I will be presenting today. And I found that the Club Leadership Handbook, that notebook that may be gathering dust for all of you right now, is one of the best tools that you'll have. It tells you all the things that you need to include in your minutes, plus all the files that you need to keep. And we'll go over that just a little bit. And another resource that I probably have on speed dial is Toastmaster International. If you have any questions in any office, and as secretary, I use them a lot, and I will just call them and ask for clarification. They are very patient and willing to give you all the information that you need. So Guy, can you put up my first slide, please? This is basically my title page. And you'll see that I have in parentheses, setting the bar high or finding the bar and setting it up. And the reason I said that is because since we haven't had much consistency with our minutes, I basically had to figure out what I wanted to do for our club. So I did not have a high bar that was set before me. I basically had to find the bar and set it up. That's what I mean by this title page. And then the next page, please, Guy. If you look in your leadership manual, you're going to see that your very first duty is due June 1st. And the reason I want to bring this up is because you're starting out as secretary, everyone has been voted in, but no one officially starts their role until July 1st. And so if that's when you decide, oh, okay, now I'm going to look and see what my duties are, you look in your leadership manual, you're going to see on July 1st, you already missed your first assignment. And that is to enter all the club officers' names at Toastmaster International. And when you do that, you're going to get a point for your DCP. It's number 10 for the DCP. So that's easy, but it can easily be forgotten. And then during the year, then it's your job to go into Toastmaster International and change the names of the officers as that happens. You want to keep that information up to date. All right, the next slide, please, Guy. And this next one is sort of a modified version of what I've taken out of the leadership handbook. It's a list of all the files that they ask us to keep as secretary. And I just called them up this week because there's nothing like a deadline to be able to get you really focused on what you're supposed to do. And the deadline was today, and so I thought, well, I'm going to check and see about these files because some of the files listed in the handbook seem like they might be something that a hoarder would keep. You have all this paperwork. But I called TI, and everything on that list is something that TI thinks is valuable and that we should be keeping that. Now, what I found is that some of the information, such as you'll have your financial statements, that is something that our treasurer keeps. But it is the secretary's job, and if you know that, then at least find out where your financial records are. And if someone is keeping them, like our treasurer, that's okay, because that's part of our club climate, the part of the makeup of our club. Just find out where those records are. And secretary, we're going to take minutes, which I'll talk about, but then we're also taking care of correspondence that might go on. For instance, our club rents out a facility, and when we had our rent raised, we had correspondence that was going back and forth as far as how much they wanted from us and when it would be paid. All that correspondence, whether it was done through snail mail or email, that's the correspondence that I would keep on hand, and you can just keep that in a full file for your club secretary minutes. And the next slide, please, Guy. This is the way I keep my minutes. It is an official vinyl tri-ring notebook, and it has all of our minutes in it. And I have that hand calligraphy label right on the front, just so that we know how important our minutes are. But the reason I have it in this notebook is because for every meeting, I will take this notebook. And anyone that wants to look through there, if they weren't able to read the minutes, if they want to look back on some records, it's right there for them. If you have another way of keeping it, that's fine. And I do this on a consistent basis. And if you want to keep it electronic, I recommend that too, because there's so many records that we need to keep for so long. But I like this notebook so that they have a hands-on way to look through their records. And the next page, please, Guy. When you open up my notebook, this next slide is going to be what you see. It's slide 5. Thank you. So this is a cover letter. And the reason I put this in is it has all of our officers, which makes it sort of a reminder. You say, oh, I remember that. I need my information from when Ron Cockrell was our president. It just kind of has our list of who's making the, being the treasurer, the sergeant of arms, all those officers in our club. But at the very bottom, it says that what I do is I take the minutes and I send them out to all of the members after our meeting. And I try to do that within at least 2 days of the meeting, because I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that you think you may remember what went on that meeting, but then you have a better memory than I do, because I find that if I don't do it in a timely manner, I'm forgetting my minutes. So I try to write my minutes up within 24 to 42 hours after I do the meeting, and then I send it out to everybody. And what it's saying on the bottom of that paper is that, to me, that's our official recognizing that we're going to accept these minutes. In other words, I don't read them at the meeting. That takes up too much time. So we just take advantage of what we have with our computers now, sending it out to all the members. Now, if they have any corrections or changes or suggestions, they send them to me, and I will make those. I don't resend the minutes unless it's a major change. If someone writes back to me and they say, you got my membership, not my membership, my designation wrong, could you change that? I'll change that, but that's not a need for me to send out the minutes to everybody. And then those changes are printed out. I'm able to put them in that notebook, and then anybody can check those. And Guy, can we go on to slide 6, please? Now, this was the biggest thing that I had to figure out. What did I want to have in the minutes? Now, if you go to the leadership manual, it will tell you what to have in the minutes as far as what Toastmasters requires. And I have done that, but I added a few extra things, which we'll see on some next slides. But mainly the contents of your minutes can only be what's said at the meeting. If you have any other information about what's being said, but it's not said at the meeting, you really cannot put that in your meeting minutes, because you're making a record of what was shared, spoken, done at that particular meeting. Now, let's say like you bring up a topic of interest and people need to do some research on that. Your president assigns that person to do the research. Then you may bring that meeting to the next meeting, you may bring that up. And in that way, you're able to put that into your minutes. And if you have any information that goes on between one meeting to the next, that probably covers information that was followed that was written in your minutes, then you can add those as an addendum to your minutes. You can print out emails, you can print out any other information that somebody sends you and add those to the minutes so that you have a written record all together of what's going on. A way that you can manipulate having information brought into your minutes, let's say like you would like to record some information. We have contests coming up now, and you want information brought up about the contest, but perhaps that wasn't announced at the meeting. Just raise your hand during the meeting, and you can go ahead and present that and say, can you please tell me what date our area contest is going to be? As a secretary or anybody else, if that was said during a meeting, now I can put that information into the meeting. So, I mean, into the minutes. So that's a way you can sort of manipulate the information that's going in to make sure that it's said in a meeting, and that's what you're recording. And the next slide, please, Guy, number 7. Now, what I'm going to give you in the following slides are actually copies of what I have put into our minutes, but I'll start with what I use for my template for the notes. You may have your own template, and that's fine. I am just showing you the things that I wish someone would have physically shown me when I started out as secretary. And since this is done in the slide format for PowerPoint, then my notes are kind of squished, but I have more space in between there. And all the information here is basically required by TI, except the grammarian word isn't. I just put that in there. In case someone wants to use it 5 years later, they're flipping through the book, they see a grammarian word, they can use that. I don't define it, I just put the word in. And then as you see, I can put the members' speeches, and in parentheses, I've put there exactly what I include. And the reason I have that information in is because members lose their manuals. And they can actually look back on these written records and be able to see what they've done in the past and be able to give the Vice President of Education a very concise list of all the speeches that they've done so that they can continue to get their education awards. And it has been used in our club. We all know how that can happen. You've misplaced your manual, you've lost it. Secretaries have a written record of that. Now, why would I put table topics participants in it? Because that's something that can be used for their competent leadership. Now, I'm talking about our traditional Toastmaster program that we've had. And you can get credit in your competent leadership manual for being a table topic speaker. So I put those names in there, and that is a record. A person can go back and say, oh, I did it on this date, and go ahead and record it in their CL manual. Now, there's also attendance. I did not keep doing attendance. I thought maybe that was taking up too much space in our records, but in our leadership manual, they ask that we keep the attendance. So I just sit in the back of the room. As people come in, I mark them off. And now I have an attendance record, and I include that with our minutes. Can we do slide 8 now, Guy? Now you get to look into my notebook, and I've taken just one page from our minutes, and you'll see how I've translated my notes into the written record that goes for the minutes. Now, when I do my notes, they are a mess, especially when I do the officer's notes. But I call that job security because no one else can translate those minutes but me. So I put them in this form, and this is what I have in our notebook. And like I said, if a member needs information about what they did for a speech, it's all written right here. If the VPE wants to check it out, it's all right here. I also put for announcements and discussion, and you'll see club business. I wrote down that there were no announcements and there was no club business. And the reason I do that is because then people know that, oh, she didn't just leave it blank because she forgot. I actually did not take any minutes for those particular topics, so I don't need to write them in. But you have those sections there, announcements and discussion and club business. That's really kind of to your discretion when you're trying to figure out where you want things to go in the minutes. And then you'll see I have officers' reports, and I would have every officer that made some sort of comment that pertained to their office or an announcement specific to their office. I'll put that there under officers' reports. And for ribbon winners, I put that in because to have a good climate, they recommend that you recognize your members when they make these great accomplishments. So I put our ribbon winners in, and then I go right onto our Facebook page, and I just put those 3 topics right on our page after our club meeting, and that recognizes our members. Then it says right here, members' presence their names are in bold, and that's where I have that attendance record that I had on slide 7. And I will have that in our minutes, and instead of putting a check by their name, I just make their name bold. Everyone knows when they had attended, and it makes it easy for our Vice President of Education. Can we do slide 9, please, Guy, the next slide? All right, we are also responsible as secretaries to take care of the minutes for the board meeting, the executive meeting, the officers meeting, whatever you want to call it. So here's my little plug. If your club is not having an officers meeting, it's very important that you do. It makes a very healthy club when you have your club meetings for your officers. That's when they can discuss things that maybe you don't want to take time in a meeting to talk about. Maybe there's something that needs to be discussed among the officers to make the members happy. Whatever is done in the officers meeting, you take the minutes for that. And you'll see that I have officers present, so there's an attendance, so to speak, and officers absent. Once again, I still will put all officers were present because I don't want someone to think, oh, she just forgot that. No, I made note that there were no officers there. Then I have a section for each one of the officers, and if they share something about their role, then I'll go ahead and write that for their particular office. And the reason I do that, because for the officers' minutes, they can be sometimes 2 to 3 pages long, and I figure that when I break it down to the different offices, then maybe when they're looking for particular notes, they'll know where they can go and find that information. Then you'll see there's general discussion, and that could just be something that our club is talking about. It's not something that goes in a particular office. I'll give you an example. For our general discussion, we had made a change on our agenda where we were trying to just streamline our timing. We had had an inspirational minute, but the officers had decided that to streamline our minutes, our agenda, we would take that off for just a period of time. And one of the members asked about that. So we discussed it at the meeting and shared with them the reason we had done that was just to streamline our minutes, but we would probably reintroduce that at a later time. There's no reason to discuss that in the meeting and take up time, but it was something that was important to that member. If it's important to our member, it's going to be important to the officers. So we discussed it. We all had an understanding of how we would handle that. Once again, this is just a template for my officers meeting. When I get it home, it is a mess. That's job security, but it's also important then again that I go ahead and translate those meetings minutes as soon as possible, because I will forget even what my messy notes mean. And then we have the temp slide, Guy, if you could show us that. This is what the final minutes look like, and this is just part of it because of the space that I was allowed for a PowerPoint slide. And you'll see basically same thing. I have the attendance there. I put the guests that were there, and then I put the officers report. Now, for your minutes, what you're going to do is you're not transcribing everything that's said at a meeting. You're basically taking the things at the meeting and trying to make sense of them so that the officers, when they look at the minutes, they know what went on. And they can see areas that maybe they need to follow up on. And it just makes a written record of everything that's said. We've had some questions where we said, well, did we talk about such and such, and which was the decision? And we would go back and be able to find that information in the minutes. And once again, I send these officers' minutes out only to the officers. And then I wait for them a day or two to send back any suggestions or changes they have. And I usually always have something that I may need to change. It's usually very minor. And we'll send that out to all the officers so that they can know what went on and what they need to follow up on at a next meeting. And the very last slide, Guy. So I'm giving you permission to use these templates as needed. But as Guy was saying, this is a time for all of us to be able to share I went to an officers meeting yesterday, an officers training yesterday, and we had some really good ideas as we sat around with the secretaries and just gave each other ideas, asked each other questions, and that's what I think that District 33 wants for these webinars. I find that by aligning what my minutes and my expectations with the files with what Toastmaster International asks for, and then also just keeping those guidelines from the club leadership handbook, then I'm really be able to present some minutes that seem to be useful for our club. And I wanted to thank Guy and District 33 for asking me to do this. And I hope that this is an opportunity that we can just share with each other, because I'm still in a learning mode also. And I love that part about Toastmasters. So I'm ready to open this up for questions, Guy, however you want to handle that.
Very nice work, Linda. A lot of very detailed information that you provided all of us, and we had a host of questions and discussion. So let me go into our chat to see where we are.
And if I can't answer, maybe there's someone else who can too.
Right. We have some of these secretaries that we have out here. I know their backgrounds, and they are extremely competent. They're going to have a lot to contribute.
Oh, good.
Diane Hunter.
I'm taking notes.
Diane Hunter asked, as an addendum to the first set of minutes or when the report is given?
Is the addendum to the first set of minutes? Oh, all right, I'll explain what I mean by that, and maybe I'll answer the question. An addendum, I looked up the definition. It's just when you want to add extra information to something that's already out there. So one thing I forgot to add is that I always attach my agenda to the minutes. So if I had an addendum, and that could just be something like a flyer to a contest, I would put that on there. Or if someone sent an email that was clarifying some information, I would print that out and I would put that on the minutes that there's an addendum, information pertaining to discussion at the meeting. And then I would attach that to the minutes. So I hope that answers Diane's question.
Okay. And this question is for Jackie Alford. Are you doing minutes of all general meetings or just officer meetings? And then she asked, why not use a sign-in sheet?
Okay, I do the minutes for all of the meetings because I had someone say, well, I only do minutes for important meetings, but I never know if it's going to be an important meeting or not until I'm there. And also because I'm giving credit, giving a record of all the speeches that speakers made too. So that's another record. And then so we don't use a sign-up sheet, Jackie. We have a guest book, so we'll use that. But we don't have a sign-in sheet, and maybe we don't have the sign-in sheet because I take the attendance. So like I said, I hope that answers your question too. But I take minutes at every regular meeting and every officers meeting.
Steve Sharp asked, he stated, the most important thing I found as secretary was not to get behind on the minutes. Get them done right away and sent out. In your club, who does the minutes if you are absent?
Thank you for asking that, because I was going to address that, Steve. I have distinguished Toastmaster Patsy Bella. She's also my mother. She's a member of our club. She's been in Toastmasters forever, and she's been a secretary, so I will ask her. But what I want to tell all of us now is that we should start maybe bringing someone alongside of us and showing them what we mean for the minutes. Direct them to this webinar or something so that they have time to see what I'm doing and what is applied into the minutes, and let them go ahead and do their job as far as helping out. So I would try to train someone or ask someone who's already done it. Unfortunately, we didn't have anyone in our club who was really had done that before. So asking Patsy Bella was what really has saved me when I go on vacation.
And that's leads into a question. That leads into a question that I personally have, having been a member of a club that only recently got to the point where we had a real system for the secretary. Steve Sharp is actually the secretary. what do you say to clubs? We're not the only one, obviously, in the district that doesn't have a regular secretary. What is the first step that you would recommend to a club to get them on track in tracking the record?
In taking the minutes, Guy, is that what you mean?
Right, and truly having a secretary who is creating an archive for the club.
Right, and I appreciate you using that word too. You actually are creating an archive for your club. But I would, if you already have a person, see if you can get someone who will come alongside. You can mentor to do that. But if you don't, that's, to me, it seems like another great way to tell everyone how important our officers' roles are, and that the secretary is an important part, and that there is help out there. And if you mess up, go ahead and get up and try it again. And like I said, this webinar and your officer training are the things that bring people to and show it to them. That's the only way I can think of doing it. If you haven't had someone before, let them know that there's help out there for them. They're not just, they may be reinventing the wheel for their club, but they're not reinventing the wheel for the secretary role.
And tap into the resources that are available from other members. And
yes.
Steve said, our secretary keeps the roster and makes copies from time to time for all of the members.
Yes. And that's something that club does, and that's a great idea. As a secretary, we're supposed to keep those rosters. So my thought is that we should get that information off the TI website and keep that in our files. And I'll tell you, one thing that we use our rosters for is when we've had an open house, we've often gone back into those roster and our archives and pulled out those names and invited them to our open house. And it has been wonderful. We get to see old faces again. They may not be able to be in Toastmasters, but they love coming in the open house. It just gives us a great energy, and we love showing them what we can do now. And that's another way that the rosters can be handy. But the secretary is supposed to keep those. So that's great that your secretary does that, Steve.
Chris Diane Hunter said, thank you. You answered her question correctly, the one that she had earlier.
Good.
Chris Hempelman asked, or he said, thank you, Linda, for this valuable information for your time. How long should we keep our club records? My Toastmasters files are full, and I am concerned about throwing anything away. We can always scan and store the records on a scan disk or on cloud storage.
Perfect. That's your answer. Chris, that's your answer for how to keep those records. You can go through, what I did one time, I went through, we had like 3 boxes of club stuff, and I went through it and narrowed it down to 1. And what I did was I separated out the things that went to different members or different officers and said, can you look through this and see if it's any good for us anymore? So I gave that to them. But scanning is a way you can do it. And if you look in your club leadership handbook, it will tell you how long you have to keep all of those records. And I was surprised at how long we have to keep some of them. And so to do what you were saying, Chris, to put it up there in the cloud, it's kept and it's not clutter. So that's the best way to go do it.
Right, and things are so much different even than when I joined Toastmasters 11 years ago, Linda, and that we are so digitally oriented now that basically you don't really have to hold on to the paper very long, do you? I mean, as long as it's scanned and it's somewhere safely stored,
correct,
you get rid of that paper pretty quickly. I know that we're in a very different culture now than we used to be in terms of paper and keeping things.
Yes, and then if you have it saved, then you fulfill Toastmasters requirements. And if you have a question about those things, why you have to keep them, I can tell you from personal experience that TI is very patient and will answer your questions without making you feel like an idiot. So give them a call so you know, you get a little cheering on for keeping all the digital work for that. But that's the way to go.
Okay, so we have another. Steve Sharp said, maybe some sample minute templates could be posted on the District 33 website so clubs could use it if needed.
Yes, I do not have these copyrighted copyrighted it all. And it sounded like what you were saying, Steve, is maybe some sample templates as far as something that I created, but also what other secretaries are doing, because I didn't see any minutes from anybody else before, so I made it my own. But when I talk to other secretaries, they say they're keeping minutes, and so they have some sort of template. And if that's an idea that you want to work out, Guy, or with District 33, more than happy to do that.
I do hear that quite a bit from clubs, Linda, and in response to why they don't have a secretary is that they'll say that they've tried to create their own templates or systems for the secretary's position, and they haven't been able to do it. And maybe if we had standard kind of format for that, I don't know. If you go to Toastmasters International, is there a standard format for club secretary?
I didn't find one, Guy, but let me tell you, I have not checked like recently, because it was when I became the secretary 2 years ago, they didn't have them. So I just kind of went my own route. They might have it now, but if not, what I recommend is I just made my template up, put it out there for the club, and ask them for feedback. And I thought, what do I want to have in the minutes that will be important to our members and to our officers? And so they gave me feedback. And like I said, there was no bar set, so whatever I did was great.
And I think it really tends to work out that way. Whatever it is that you create is better than you not having any minutes whatsoever.
Right.
Would you agree, Linda? I mean, obviously, you're giving us great information about how to do it well. But I mean, if you're just writing something on a piece of paper about the meeting, if that's the point in which you have to start, that is better than not having any archives at all.
Right. And Guy, it comes back to what Toastmaster teaches us: leadership. So jump in there as a secretary and just start doing what you think is best, and then change it as you go on if you think you need to.
So Wayne had a comment. Sabera, how long do you preserve the information? I think we kind of covered that in an earlier question. Basically forever.
Well, look in that the club leadership handbook will tell you. It says specifically the name of the record and how long to keep it. I was surprised that that the things that they wanted to keep forever. That's when the cloud comes in handy. So thank you, Wayne. That's a good question, though.
And basically he said, yes, are they easily retained indefinitely? When all else fails, save it. And wouldn't that be a good, kind of like your taxes? If you're worried about your taxes, just save it, and then you know you have the records.
Yeah, you can scan it and do it electronically if you want to.
Dana Wall Oakley and I have been in a club together for years, and Dana is an outstanding secretary. She had, here's what she mentioned. I have 2-page, 3-page, and 4-page templates that I've shared with the clubs in Las Vegas, which she has. Probably 80% of the clubs in Las Vegas are operating off of a template that Dana created many years ago. She'd be happy to give this to me to have on the website, she said.
I think that's so perfect. That will answer the person's question earlier who said, how do we get people to do a secretary when they don't have a clue? So then you say, okay, here's your template, and take it from there. I just always figure what's important for the club, what do they need to know, and that's the information that I'll put in. Please, I don't think our minutes need to be a transcription. They do not need to be what someone wore that day. No, those kind of things we don't need to include. Just the minimum that will, just think, does this apply to the club business? And maybe that helps you narrow down what to put in there.
And has this become a leadership opportunity for you, Linda? Have people reached out to you to ask you for the templates that you're using in Lompoc Valley of Flowers?
Well, yes, they have. And then when I find, like when we like officers training like yesterday, then I'll find that other people are doing something else. But I've been kind of surprised because some secretaries have said they aren't doing anything. And in my mind, I'm not sure what they thought that role was. But I think the reason they think that they don't need to do anything or take minutes is because they didn't have an example before. So I guess that's when you become the example and you start look in your leadership handbook, see what needs to be done, and you take that on. And now you be the example.
Great point.
Find that bar and set it.
Okay, so Wayne says, as we move more fully into pathways, how will the secretarial role evolve in your opinion?
Okay, goodbye, everybody.
I hear that a lot about pathways.
Okay, so Wayne, we are very fortunate to have distinguished Toastmaster Ron Allman in our club, who is the ambassador for Pathways for our area. So I will go to him and ask. Now, if you look at one of my PowerPoint slides, I think the one where I have my final minutes for a meeting, it has on there the way that I record the information about a pathway speech, which is a little different than what our regular speech is. And I am going to be working more with our VPE, who is also Ron Allman, and seeing exactly what he needs from the secretary, because the role of the secretary and the pathways with VPE are very much connected now, and that's a big learning curve for all of us. But just know that secretaries, we are going to be involved in that. Talk to your VPE, and then talk to your Pathways ambassador if you need to. And we will make that changeover. We have 2 years. We can do this.
Right. So have you altered the way you're going about your notes, incorporating things within pathways?
I haven't, because the way we've been doing Pathways is with the speeches. So I have written the speech information down differently. And so if you look back on that slide, for some reason, we have a new member. His name is Gunner, and that name is sticking in my mind. If you look on there, you'll see how his Pathway speech is written. So they have it's not even a manual, it's a path now. But I also, what I'd like to do is put the speech title on, because if someone's looking through those minutes, sometimes all they need is a title. And that says, oh, I remember doing that speech. And then they can go further with the information as needed.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
I know that Lompoc Valley of Flowers is a very successful club. Have you noticed a change in the club? Well, I mean, since you created this systematic way of being a secretary, is it helping the club to run more efficiently?
I've had people that are in our club member or the officers say that they appreciate the minutes, because we haven't had them before. But also, when members are absent, they don't know what went on in a meeting. And so when they read those minutes, now they know what happened. One of the things I've done on our minutes is, as we're doing our club season now, the club contest season, I put just a little part on there that says dates to remember, contests to remember. So all the members have that information. But I'll tell you, Guy, what seems to have been happening in our club is all of our officers are going into their role and making it their own. We are encouraging each other. We're encouraging our members. And it's like all of us combined are stepping up, it seems, in each one of our roles as an officer. We encourage each other. Our president, Ron Cockrell, he's great at encouraging us and making sure everyone's doing what their job is. So the officers are really setting the tone for our club. And if I'm stepping up and doing minutes, that means maybe another officer is stepping up and doing what they're doing. And then I'm saying, oh, well, I have to step up mine. So we're kind of encouraging each other. I think your club climate is part of that. So if the secretary is the first one to step up, who knows who's going to follow after that?
I agree, and I've noticed. I was club president in the last term in my club, and it was the first time that we had a consistent secretary. And
Okay.
I mean, I've been president probably 2, 3 other times in the same club, and I noticed a distinct difference in the way that we operated when we had minutes, when we had that structure, that predictability that comes with having a regular report from a secretary. So I wanted to hear your experience, because I know what my experience was, and Steve Sharp is out there, and he really implemented a lot of the systems that we are utilizing, and I know that it made a change in our club for sure.
Great. Kudos to you, Steve. You set the bar high. That's good.
Yeah, he really did. He just stepped up. We were looking for someone very similar to you, whereas we hadn't been able to consistently have someone that would fill the role. Actually, right before he joined, we did have a member that got us started, and then Steve came, pulled it all together. They were both outstanding leaders in that way. So you don't always have to be the person who's standing up in front of everyone as the president to be maybe the most important leader within your club at that particular time.
It's a good point. Very good point. Right. Everyone will start coming alongside, following you. It's each one of us as individuals to do our best part, and that shows leadership, and that's what I came into Toastmasters for. So I appreciate that.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with everyone about the the office of club secretary?
When I first came into Toastmasters,